Christian parenting.
Welcome to Called to Love, where we discuss all things adoption and foster care and dive into the practical, the clinical, and most importantly, the biblical perspectives to help you and your family thrive. I'm Summer Colbert, adoptive mom, director of adoption and foster ministry, and champion for the Arkansas Baptist Children and Family Ministries. Adoption isn't just a process. It is an invitation to go on a journey with the Lord where you will experience life-changing opportunities to grow in your faith and learn to love in an entirely new way. One thing is for sure, being called to love means you will never be the same. Welcome back, friends. Today on the podcast, we are continuing on with reframing your mindset as a Christian adoptive parent. In the last episode, we talked about remembering your why and how our ultimate goal for our families and for the children God gives us is relationship with God and relationship as a family. Now, I want to remind you, it is not too late to grab your free download that I've created to walk you through this series. Use it to refer back to the scriptures I've mentioned, as well as journal and prayer prompts shared at the end of each episode. The link is in today's show notes. Today's topic is establishing your expectations. It is so easy to begin to craft our expectations for who our adopted child will be, how fast the process of completion will be, and what family life will look like when your child comes home. Without realizing it, many of the struggles adoptive parents face with their journey and with their child are often the result of unrealized expectations that have not been met. So I want to speak into this today and offer perspective from both scripture and personal experience. I've had a lot of aha moments since our daughter joined our family, and one of the biggest aha moments I've experienced had everything to do with my own expectations and my poor response to them. Well, and the fact that nothing really happened as I planned. So I'm ready to dive in with you. Let's get started. The sun was barely up, and so were my husband and daughter. The night before, she had requested a special daddy-daughter breakfast at the newly opened Chick-fil-A just down the road from our house. For years, my husband and sons enjoyed the tradition of breakfast with dad before school, and now it was finally her turn. Still half asleep, I helped my husband to gather my daughter's beautiful black hair into a ponytail, made sure she had her lunch for the day, and hadn't snuck out without socks on her feet. I kissed them both and dozed back off to soak up a valuable 30 more minutes of sleep, and a short time later, I got a text from my husband. It said something like this: "Can you please come swing into the parking lot and get her when you pull in? She's melting down for some random reason because she wants you." Well, with that simple text, I knew the morning had not gone as expected. All too familiar with her reactions when things don't go as planned, I pictured the tears, a locked jaw, and refusals to explain why she was so upset. I tried to balance the task of replying to the text while overseeing my new 15-year-old driver in the driver's seat during 8 a.m. traffic, and my heart rate increased as any semblance of a peaceful and relaxed morning was now gone. I replied to my husband, "I can't walk her in. I'm wearing my house shoes. Take her through her breathing exercises to calm her, remind her that today is her special day with me after school, and let her know that she has a choice to walk into school with her brothers or she can go in now." Well, we managed to make it to the parking lot where my daughter flew from her daddy's car towards mine with my son having not yet hit the brakes. And I'm going, "Stop, stop, stop." And I shouted as she flung open the passenger door and jumped into my lap, burying her head in my chest for comfort. I glanced at my husband and gave him the thumbs up that I would take it from here. We drove through the car line, and by the grace of God, I got everybody dropped off before the tardy bell rang. And both my husband and daughter had gone to bed the night before, excited for their special time together. And without realizing it, expectations had gotten the best of both of them, and their hearts and their relationship were a little bruised that day. I had a few brief moments with my husband after I got everybody dropped off, and he didn't have a lot of words to say, but I could clearly see that he was hurt because he wanted that special one-on-one time with her. He desperately wanted that sweet daddy-daughter relationship, and he didn't understand what he'd done wrong. His expectations had been disappointed. That has been very true for us all throughout our adoption journey. And if I've learned anything through my more than 10 years of adoption experience, it's this. Adoption rarely turns out the way that we expect. The adoption journey is filled with messy circumstances, unpredictable timing, and constant detours. It's honestly like shooting at a moving target most of the time. And once your child comes home, things rarely unfold the way that you imagine. And the truth is, the expectations that you set for your adoption journey will determine your mindset and how well you walk through it. Expectations can be a slippery slope and cause well-intended parents to trip up and focus their time, effort, and energy towards an ideal that is different from what God has planned. When we were met with detours and disappointment, we spiraled back into fears and questions. And I think that's common for many adopted parents, all the while wondering if we even heard God correctly. Once my husband and I decided we were all in and ready to begin the adoption process, I held fast to any guarantee of timing given by our attorney or our agency that we were working with at the time. In my mind, I was ready for this thing to happen, so I began operating under the assumption that if I could just hustle through the paperwork, everything would happen quickly, and I'd get to my fairy tale ending and picturesque arrival airport scene. But it doesn't work that way. Your expectations will not force God's timing. And I didn't enjoy realizing that truth. But friend, there's no truer statement than this. God is never late, and his timing is always perfect. Understanding this truth is the beginning of the shift of reframing our mindset and allowing space for God to work in his perfect timing. He's going to do it whether we allow it or not. So rather than fight against the red tape, the delays, and detours, we as adoptive parents can set ourselves up for success by releasing expectations of timing when it comes to the completion of our adoption. It's really honestly about having a willing heart to do the next thing needed and then wait. I hate waiting. I don't know about you. But after all, he is the one who called you to the adoption in the first place. And if it is in his will for you to have a child, he will see this calling through to completion. Hey friends, our kids crave connection with us and with God. And one of the strongest ways we can show love to our kids is through words of encouragement. That's why Christian Parenting created Noteworthy Prayers. These 50 customizable notes were designed to help you remind your kids that you love them, are thinking about them, and are always praying for them. Each card has an uplifting message, a Bible verse, a prayer, and a space for you to write your own note to your child. Simply tear off a page and place it in or on their backpack, lunchbox, bathroom mirror, or car dashboard, wherever they're going to find it. Get creative. Remember, your kids are never too young or too old to hear how much you adore them. For more information and to get your cards, head over to cpgive.org. That's cpgive.org. Now let's get back to the conversation. Something that God has taught me over the years that I regularly share with the families that I serve is this. Adoption is not about getting a child for your family. It is about walking a journey of obedience as God leads you to the child he has for your family. If we're not careful, our expectations can take our minds off of the truth that God knows who is supposed to be a part of our families and who isn't. He creates families based on the individual plan and calling over each of our lives, including our adoptive children. So while I wanted to barrel through and just get to that result, God already knew who belonged in our family and who didn't. He knows the same for you, dear friend, and he can be trusted with the timing of your journey to bring the child that is meant for you. Can I just be honest and tell you that my expectation of timing tripped me up with every single process we experienced? I put blinders on, and nothing else in the world had my attention like that current process did, including my family. You've heard of Bridezilla, right? Yeah, in my house, Adoptzilla made Bridezilla look like a gecko. Just being honest. My drive to just get it done affected my behavior in a way that I have only come to terms with in recent years. It hurt my people. It made me obsessive, irritable, unavailable for the people in my life, and all around no fun. Just keeping it real. When we'd get a call or an email that the timeline had been pushed back for one reason or another, I would spiral, pout, walk around just disgruntled and defeated. Now, mind you, I had an abundance of responsibilities and people in my life that fully deserved someone who was present, pleasant, and thankful for what she had right in front of her. But what they got was quite the opposite. I'm thankful for the grace of God, as well as my people, as I trudged through that season, unwilling to learn and to be still and wait. I look back and I feel like I missed out on sweet years with my children sitting right in front of me, all because of my focus on the child who wasn't here yet. I missed out on months and years of connecting to the heart of my husband, who just did his best to stay out of the wake of my madness. I made the process about getting it done, rather than sitting content in the season that God had me in. And looking back, this could have been a sweet season of trust and growth with the Lord. But apparently I needed a few times around the mountain. And God knew that I needed to learn. And so with love and patience, He allowed me to trudge, spiral, wear down, and repeat the cycle several times over before it finally clicked. Dear friend, may I just encourage you with this? Don't try to force God's hand or His timing. He has proven to me over and over again that if it is His will, He will make it happen, sometimes in circumstances beyond comprehension. And if it is not His will, there is no amount of effort and zeal that will make those doors open. And this is actually an act of love by our Heavenly Father, as He knows who and what we need in our lives. So take heart, do the steps, embrace the journey, trust Him, and love your people right in front of you while you wait. I hope that encourages you today, because there's much more to be experienced on the other side of that arrival scene. And that comes when we actually meet our child. When our family was finally matched and expecting the birth of our daughter, my husband and I couldn't help but dream about who this precious little girl was going to be. We were finally getting our girl. We had rowdy boys in our house. And just like any parent, we imagined what she would look like and what her personality would be. And then when our daughter was born, she blew every single one of our expectations out of the water. Instead of a quiet nature, she has a voice that carries far and wide. Instead of dainty, she is tough enough to take on anyone who dares to mess with her. And instead of tea parties and dolls, she prefers sports, fishing, and fixer-upper shows on HGTV. Now, while I have come to adore all of these traits about my daughter, in the early years, I found myself resenting the fact that she didn't match the picture that I had imagined. Instead of a pleasant and adoring gaze, my daughter saw frustration reflected back at her when she came in having muddied her brand new shoes that I just bought her. She heard sighs of disappointment when she ripped bows out of her hair and chose athletic wear instead of the cute outfit with frills. Ultimately, our relationship was hindered because she wasn't meeting the expectations that I had set in mind about who she was, how she looked, what her interests were, and what her behavior should have been. And without realizing it, even at a young age, my daughter began to measure her value based on the expectations that I had rather than the reality of who she was. With the simplest of rebukes and corrections of behavior, she began asking me through tears, "Am I the worst daughter ever?" This gut-wrenching question was the reflective mirror that I needed to show me just what my expectations were doing to her. So no matter how your children join your family, you as the parent hold sway over them like no other relationship in the world. Your opinions, your viewpoint, your body language can make or break them. This is especially important for adoptive parents to be aware of, as feelings of safety and trust is the key to success in navigating a healthy relationship with your child. Adopted children will carry questions about who they are for the entirety of their lives. And as their parents, it is our job to help them navigate their story in a safe and loving environment. This means without bias, judgment, or having the burden of living up to someone that they simply are not. Over the years, I have learned about successful ways to connect with children and create a pathway to trauma healing through the TBRI curriculum by Dr. Karen Purvis. One of the greatest lessons I have learned in trauma training was the concept of mirroring preciousness to a child. It's very simple, and yet it changed my entire approach to parenting. Dr. Purvis explains the concept through a simple scenario. Imagine you are a parent who, after a long and busy day, sneaks into your child's room to check on them while they sleep. In that moment of peace, you are reminded of your overwhelming love for them as you gaze at their preciousness. But the child has no idea because they're asleep. So Dr. Purvis encourages parents to catch the eyes of their children throughout the day and mirror that same preciousness to them where they can see. This simple act communicates to them your approval and just how much they are loved, which builds trust and connection. I think back to my husband and daughter that morning when their breakfast went terribly awry. What was expected to be a lovely and memorable time together proved memorable, but not very lovely. Instead of giggles and happy moments, their morning turned into pandemonium and hurt feelings. And it all boiled down to the simplest disruptions in both of their expectations, but added up, it was enough to derail the entire morning. My daughter expected to eat inside the restaurant just like her older brothers had done for years, but in the interest of saving time, my husband innocently decided to scrap that plan and go with the drive-thru and enjoy breakfast in the school parking lot instead. And just like that, our daughter became a ticking time bomb. Being the youngest, she wanted to do everything the way her brothers did, and she also depended on them being with her when she walked into school every morning. And the school parking lot suddenly reminded her that Mama was nowhere close by, and suddenly, tick, tick, boom. Now, had the expectations been clearly communicated and managed from the beginning, the daddy-daughter morning could have been very different, and their feelings and relationships would have been protected. And this is where I want to encourage you. While it is natural and easy to dream about who your child will be or what life will be like when they come home, it is so important to be aware of your expectations. Hold them loosely and daily release them to the Lord. In doing so, you give yourself the advantage of an unexplainable quiet rest and growing in the Lord as you deepen your walk with Him while also answering in obedience to the calling of adoption. Rather than setting expectations for your adoption journey and requiring God to meet them, begin praying now and surrendering any idea of how you think things will turn out, and ask God to guide your mindset every step of the way. God always uses Scripture to minister to me and meet me in places where I'm struggling. And as I was experiencing these aha moments when it came to my expectations, He reminded me of the story of Mary in Luke chapter 1. And I really believe it's a perfect reminder of how we should respond when things don't go as planned. We know Mary as the mother of Jesus, and we revisit her story every December. But I think it's worth reminding us as we close out our time together today. So in Luke chapter 1, before the angel Gabriel visited her, Mary was just a simple girl with simple expectations for what her future would look like. Marriage to a good man, children, security, and a place in her community. But her plans were disrupted when, in a single moment, a word from the Lord changed everything. The angel came to her with a message that wrecked every plan and expectation that she had and replaced it with a calling that would change the world. Being a young Jewish girl, Mary stood to lose everything. Even those closest to her might not understand and reject her. She had every reason to fear and question, but she had a choice in how she could respond. And we see her response in Luke 1, verse 38, where she simply says, "I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me as you have said." Despite the risk, Mary gave a surrendered yes, fully trusting that the Lord was with her. And this is why she had been chosen all along, because God knew. God gave Mary a great task because He knew her heart and that His will would be fulfilled through her obedience. And let's not forget Joseph. He too faced the same challenge and ultimately embraced God's plan, marrying Mary, adopting Jesus, and fully accepting and loving Jesus as his own. This wasn't his plan either, but like Mary, Joseph gave God his yes and obediently fulfilled the calling placed on his life as Jesus' earthly father. the same truth applies to us as adoptive families. Though Mary was quite literally expecting the birth of Jesus, adoptive parents carry God's promise of new life in their heart as they wait with expectation, knowing that they have stepped out to obey what God has called them to do. So if God is calling you to adoption, you've been chosen, my friends. And before the angel gave Mary the plan, he gave her a promise that God would be with her. And that's the promise I want you to cling to today as we close out our time together. That despite your expectations, despite the moving target, despite the questions and the fears, and the struggles we have in our own journeys, God is with you. We are all on our own unique and personal journey with the Lord. And sometimes we as adults forget that our children are on their own journey as well. And that our role as parents is one of steward and shepherd. Because we all grow and develop in maturity of character and faith at different times, and it's important to recognize that and give both grace and space for that growth. When we do, it paves the way for trust and genuine connection between family members. So what expectations have you been holding on to? Many expectations are good, and I don't want to discourage you from having them at all. But I do want to encourage you today to examine and surrender your expectations to the Lord. Ask Him to give you His mind and His perspective, as we have discussed all throughout our episodes so far. I want to leave you with some takeaways. Be sure and access the free downloads so that you can use these as journal prompts and prayer prompts as we go forward. First of all, communicate with God and with your spouse. You will be amazed at how much peace there will be in your heart and your relationships when you put this into practice. Rest in God's timing for the fulfillment of what He has called you to do, and pray as often as you need to in order to overcome that temptation to pick it up and to grasp onto expectations once more. Purpose to get to know your child as they are, not who you want them to be. Ask questions, join them in their interests, and do so regularly without distraction and mirroring their preciousness. Take a moment to honestly list your expectations. Write it down. It can be very sobering to see it in black and white. Whether your child is already home or you're still waiting, pray over these expectations and ask the Lord to align your heart with His. And finally, ask God to give you healthy expectations and establish those with His heart and the truth of His word in mind. Even if you are years into your journey, friend, it is not too late. Remember, He will meet you in your journey and embrace and guide you wherever you are.